What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here. Okay, before I start this video, let me just say that I was actually planning on making the week WWE went PG, or what WWE was like 10 years ago, another version of that video, totally different. But I had some WWE Network issues, and I had to resort to something quickly. So I decided on this one. Why? Because it was easy to find on YouTube, a bunch of videos about it in HD and stuff like that. So yeah, I decided let's go with this. But yeah, next video, it'll probably be resolved, hopefully. That's the reason why this video was made today. It was actually supposed to be what WWE was like 10 years ago, or the week WWE went PG. I believe the week WWE went PG is the next video if the problem's resolved. So yeah. Okay, this one, I don't get why they did a sequel. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I take back what I said. It's very clear why they did. The buy rate would have been astronomical, and yes, that's exactly what happened. The problem with this one, though, is the fact that the first one wasn't special anymore in a way. It felt like the match, WrestleMania 28. Once in a lifetime, and to be honest, it was. The build-up. Everything was so awesome about it. Once again, it's understandable why they did it. One thing, though, that I don't get is that why they didn't change it up. Like, why didn't they mix it? Why didn't they make this one a bit different? Like, why wasn't it a triple threat match, perhaps? Honestly, I would have preferred Cena and Punk and Brock Rock too. I think that would have popped the buy rate too, but that never happened. Anyways, John Cena The Rock Part 2. 11, 12-year-old me was hooked to the story. I was entertained by it, but I wasn't, like, hooked to it like must-watch TV or something like that. I knew it was a foregone conclusion. And the fact that it was for a title that John Cena didn't hold for all of 2012, I mean, it was obvious Rock was going to retain. Seriously, though, The Rock's return in 2013, it should have gone down different, in my opinion. Anyways, let's get into it. At this point, John Cena was looking to rebound from his worst year ever, and looking back at his run, it was indeed his worst year, but compared to others, it pales in comparison. I mean, he won Money in the Bank, he beat Brock Lesnar in his first match, he literally main evented pay-per-views over the WWE Champion, and yeah, like, it was his worst year, but to say it was the worst year of any wrestler, like, oh, I fell off so hard, no. It was just a bad year for that guy. As for The Rock, he was seeking the WWE Champion. CM Punk was the current champion, and they were set to face off at the Royal Rumble. The Rock and Punk's story is for another day, but what occurred at the Rumble was Rock won the title and Cena won the Rumble, setting up a sequel to the WrestleMania 28 bout. Rock managed to beat Punk at Elimination Chamber to ensure this main event was happening. Right now, the story begins. On the February 18th, 2013 episode of Raw, The Rock came out to do something. What was this something? Well, first of all, he trashed the current WWE Championship design, as he believed the WWE title should never look like a toy, and it should never ever spin. Rock then said that when you see the WWE Championship, whether you're a wrestler or a fan, you should see the title and get inspired. He listed a bunch of past names that got louder and louder with each name. Bruno, Hulk, Brett, Austin, and then The Rock proceeded to unveil the new WWE Championship. Now I gotta mention one thing. Looking at this design, it doesn't feel long ago that the title debuted, but compared to the spinner, which lasted 8 years, this one has been around for 7. It feels like more memories were made with the spinner title than this one that they have right now. I don't know why, it just feels like that. Maybe it's because it was recent. I don't know, but yeah. Now at this point, John Cena, he was goaded into defending his spot at WrestleMania against CM Punk, so The Rock still didn't know who his opponent for the main event was. The Rock admitted that he wanted to face... We didn't get to know who The Rock wanted to face as John Cena interrupted. Cena had this smile on his face when CM Punk from out of nowhere blasted him with the now old WWE Championship. The following week, Cena and Punk had that match. You guys know about it. In my opinion, it's the best Raw match ever. I remember watching Shawn and Cena go at it for an hour. There was Brett and 1-2-3 Kid, Bulldog Owen, a bunch of matches. Like, I watched a lot of these matches, although I didn't watch them live, but I watched them. I choose this one, though. Why? That Dallas crowd was truly electric, and it was before the freaking match. Like, they knew they were in for something. They were cheering. It had a big fight feel to it. The match, it had a different vibe. It was bigger than most pay-per-view matches that happened throughout 2012. The fact that Punk hit a pile driver was jaw-dropping, and then Cena managed to hit a weird-looking Hurricanrana, then the AA to win the match. Like, it was awesome. It felt different to the matches that were going on TV, at least to me. It was super dramatic, although the results was kind of there. It was kind of vague in a way, but not that much. We kind of knew Cena was going to win. But yeah, best Raw match, or my favorite Raw match ever. So now the focus was on Cena and Rock. On the March 4th, 2013 episode of Raw, a special old school episode, Rock and John Cena went face to face. John made it seem like he was a victim. Rock's perfect, yada yada, I lost, my life is bad. He mentioned the events of WrestleMania 28 and how professionally and personally he couldn't jump that hurdle. Like, that loss set him into a tailspin, and he just couldn't recover. But now, unlike many, he's got a shot at redemption. He was gifted a second chance to right the biggest wrong of his life, and not many even get a first chance, but he's lucky to get a second one. The Rock's response Well, WrestleMania 29 matters to him too. As a matter of fact, it matters more. When he comes out to the arena and connects with every single person, it matters to him, and this is the most memorable quote to me during the feud. John Cena, you ain't getting redemption, Jack, you're getting your ass kicked. John said that he's accomplished every single goal, jumped every roadblock in his entire career, except for Rock. At WrestleMania 29, Rock's time is up, and his time is now. Rocky's response, his time is just getting started, and he believed Cena was full of crap, and the challenger tried to remind him that he was confident and arrogant, just like him last year. Rock once again responded saying that Cena thinks he can beat him while he knows he can beat him. And at WrestleMania, he's gonna beat John Cena again. Now, the build-up to this match was dry compared to the first one. They weren't taking cheap shots at one another. And John Cena's mindset, he was all about being humble in a way. Like, he was confident that he could beat The Rock, but he wasn't as arrogant as he was the previous year. Because that one mistake that he did, it cost him everything, I guess. He didn't want to undermine Rock like he did previously, as it ended up costing him. On the March 25th episode of Raw, a Legends Q&A was held for the WrestleMania main event. The Rock and John Cena answered questions from Mick Foley, Booker T, Dusty Rhodes, and Bret Hart. Foley was up first. He asked a question to John Cena. He asked Cena if he's able to live with the regret that might accompany this loss at this year's WrestleMania. Cena sucks chants intensified, and he said that losing wasn't an option last year, but Rock won. He then mentioned this year. He cited Donovan McNabb, and the Philadelphia crowd booed. He said that McNabb could not win the big one in Philadelphia, just like the WWE Universe are invested in these guys. And at the end of the day, they want to look at someone who can win the big one. Cena said that if he loses on April 7th, then he will just be like Donovan McNabb. From a stats perspective, he may be good, but he will always be known as a guy who never won the big one. Wait, what? Okay, you're telling me John Cena will always be known as the guy who never won the big one? WrestleMania 21, WrestleMania 25, WrestleMania 26 say otherwise. That's like saying Tom Brady never won the big one because he couldn't beat Eli Manning on the biggest stage. Doesn't make sense to me. You won the title at WrestleMania 3 times. You retained the title there 2 times. How is this not winning the big one? And then Cena said Rock knows nothing about failure. The Rock responded to this stating that he's gone through so much. The Rocky Maivia character, how he almost quit, but he worked his ass off and returned as The Rock. He then main evented WrestleMania in this very city. He mentioned his loss to Austin at WrestleMania 15 and how it didn't stop him. He said that he came back and became one of the greatest ever. It led to him becoming the man he is today, and in 13 days, he's gonna whip Cena's ass. Next question. Bret Hart. He asked what's changed from the past WrestleMania. Now, what's this mean? Well, what's changed? Basically, last year you guys were delivering cheap shots to one another. This year, what's different? Rock said that he beat John in the middle of the ring. Cena didn't complain about it, and he respects him for that. John mentioned that interview in 2008 and how he asked Rock to prove that he loves WWE. Cena praised Rock for staying around and not leaving like he expected him to. Despite their issues, he respects the great one. He handled the loss like a man, and in 13 days, we're gonna see how he handles his. Basically, John took a slight jab at him during this moment. Next question, Booker T. He asked Cena, why does he think he could beat The Rock? Like, why are you gonna beat him at WrestleMania? Cena took off the hat and said that because he has to. Yep, the great John Cena can't even explain why he's gonna beat The Rock. Rock then mocked him, stating that it was a shallow, weak answer. He then told him to wipe a monkey's ass with I have to. Rock pushed him to the edge, and Cena admitted that Rock couldn't beat him. He said that he beat himself at WrestleMania 28. He got caught up in the moment, and The Rock was the only person that clouded his judgment. Not the fans, not the Hammerstein Ballroom, not Chicago, no one. It was The Rock who clouded his judgment. Rock threw every ace at him, rock bottom, people's elbow, but it was he who lost the match. Now Cena, he thought to himself, why not beat him in his hometown with a stupid move? Cena promised to not allow that to happen again, and his reason for why he can do it, he knows that he is better than The Rock, and much more importantly, The Rock knows he's better than The Rock. The Great One's response, well, if Cena had him beat, he would have beat him. He mentioned how he kicked out of every move that was thrown at him, and Rock said that to be the man, you gotta beat the man, and it really fit the story. Cena's whining, I can do it, yada, I lost the match myself, then why didn't you win it? You're saying you can do it, but why didn't you do it last year? Rock said that Cena will never, and he means that Cena will never be the man. Dusty Rhodes then chimed in and said that it should be about winning and losing, not redemption and whatever. He then asked them what do they really want. Cena said that he wants to win the big one. He wants to dominate The Rock. He wants The Rock to look up at the New York sky and realize that John Cena is better been him. He wanted to hand a loss that was so devastating that it will haunt the Brahma Bull for the rest of his life. Rocky's rebuttal, he said that he ain't wired like that. After WrestleMania, he's going to wake up still the champ, while Cena's going to be stuffing his mouth with Fruity Pebbles. He then asked for Cena to prove him wrong right now. Cena took off his shirt and dog tags. Push came to shove. Well, not shove, but the AA, except that didn't happen either, as The Rock countered and had the rock bottom, proving what he said just might be true. As for their match at WrestleMania, I can't say I liked it. It would have been easy for me to like it, but for some reason I didn't. Why? Well, it's simple. There was finishers in abundance, too many false finishes, and sure, they got the crowd popping for a bit, not that much, but I just couldn't get into it. It was like playing 2K14 with infinite finishers. The pacing was off. But I will say, though, I have to add a positive to this match. There has to be. I love the part when Cena fooled Rock. He teased the people's elbow only to hoist Rock in AA position. He had this smile on his face like, I got the match, while Rock just countered into the rock bottom. Then that went back and forth trying to get that elusive finisher, and in the end, it was Cena who finally managed to hit the AA after countering the rock bottom to capture the WWE Championship. So from October 3rd, 2011, all the way up to April 7th, 2013, John Cena didn't hold the WWE or World Championship. I believe that was the longest time he didn't hold the title in his run as a main eventer up until 2016. Rock and Cena stood face to face. Cena said some undisclosed words and they shook hands. This garnered a mixed reaction from the crowd, and at this point, John Cena and The Rock were on much better terms. Cena finally understood The Rock, his work, his hustle in Hollywood. It wasn't easy. He couldn't just come back to the WWE. Like, now that he's in Hollywood, he actually apologized to The Rock a couple of years ago. In an interview back in 2016, John Cena discussed the feud with The Rock, and I quote, "For 2 years, The Rock and I kind of made fun of each other a lot. It got pretty heated and it got pretty personal. I said some things that were less than nice. He said some things that were less than nice. And I can assure you, in our line of work, there was a gray area where imagination becomes very real, and we were right in the sweet spot of that gray area, each watching the others move and not too happy with the other party. We had a match in Miami, Florida at WrestleMania, of which I finished second place. I'm very proud of that. There's a polite way of saying I lost. But we had a follow-up match at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, and I was good enough to finish first that day, and when I did, I was well aware of the amount of work Dwayne had on his plate and the fact that he did not need to come back to the WWE. I talked all that trash many years ago just to try to get him back because I, like you guys, am a fan of The Rock. So he comes back and stays for the better part of 2 years, only to lose in one of his final matches in WWE. Now, the buy rates for WrestleMania 29, it was 1,048,000, which was slightly down from 28, and the funny part about this, a bunch of wrestling news sites believed that it was a disappointment. Anyways, Cena and Rock Part 2 was painfully predictable. They should have really made it more dramatic in a way by adding a certain someone to the match. Another problem was the fact that WWE just did it to pop the buy rate, and by doing that, the full-time guys were seen as inferior. Like, it was John Cena and The Rock, and the rest of the guys that were full-time, they're way down below. And that's the problem of the decade. Part-timers, like, they just come in, they beat the other guys. It doesn't help anyone in the end. As for Cena's moment, it didn't matter. It just should have been better in a way. I mean, everyone expected him to eventually win the title, but they could have done a better job of telling the story. With that said, that whole WrestleMania was off. You had 2 rematches that were really predictable, and they could have just mixed the 3 main events and it would have been better. Like Brock Rock. Hell, Rock Taker might have delivered. With that said, Rock suffered an injury during the match. He didn't experience failure after the match. As a matter of fact, he experienced so much success. John Cena had another title reign that was decent, and yeah, that's it. Overall, this story, like, it was off. The promo that they had on Old School Raw, I liked it, but other than that, not much was going on. But it brought closure to the feud. So yeah, that's it for this video. Make sure you hit an AA on the like button, and perhaps a rock bottom on the subscribe button. Peace, I'm out.